Today is sewing marathon day, and for today's marathon we're all going to be sewing up different versions of the Sewflo sewing pattern, the Poppie. The Poppie can be a pouch, it can be a purse, or it can be a clutch. I am sewing up the pouch version, and there is 3 different sizes to this pattern. Here is the large, here is the small, and in today's video we're making a medium. This pattern has a cute shape and a great accent piece here on the front. This accent piece is great if you want to showcase your custom prints without using a lot of them, so you can get the most out of your custom prints. On the front of each one of mine, I'm adding a cork tag. On the back of each of mine, I'm adding a woven label. All of my accent pieces are going to be from the Emporium. They are all on pre-order right now. This vinyl and this vinyl are both from Jen's Fabrics. I'm going to have a link for the pattern, for the fabrics, and for the vinyls all in my description. I'm using cotton woven on mine, so I'm going to demonstrate how we get the cotton woven to have this finished non-fraying edge so we don't have to worry about any problems later. On this version, I followed the pattern exactly and didn't have any additions. On this one, I did add the addition of some lace here at the bottom, just a cute little ruffle lace. On the version I'm going to do today, I'm going to be adding piping. This is what the front of the pouch today that I'm making is going to look like. Again, I'm using the fabric from the Emporium, and again I'm using a cork tag. On this one I added piping here in a contrast using vinyl. We're going to sew up the back on camera, so I'll walk you through all the steps, but this is what the front will look like, and we're going to make the back look the same, except instead of a cork tag we'll have a woven label. So let's go ahead and get started making our medium size Poppie pouch. So here is what the pattern piece for the accent piece for the woven for the medium Poppie pouch looks like. I printed out the pattern piece, I cut out the woven, and then I added a layer of Royal Pixie Heavy on the back, kept it out of the seam allowance. I went ahead and added a woven tag to the top, and I have it centered there. Now what I need to do is I need to finish this bottom edge. I don't have to worry about the top, but just the bottom. I need to fold it so that it will be a finished edge and so that it can't fray after I attach it to the vinyl. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to the back, and I'm going to make tiny snips all along here, about an inch or so apart, but I'm definitely not going to clip all the way up to this interfacing. I want to give myself plenty of room so whenever I fold these pieces, I won't be seeing the other side. It'll look very finished. So I'll start here on one edge, and then you can see I'm just going to clip about halfway to my stabilizer. Once I have all the clips made, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this pattern piece right sides down, and I'm going to grab some glue. The glue I'm going to use is this Beacon 3-in-1. This is my favorite glue to use for anything, but you could definitely use a different type of glue if you wanted to, or even a double-sided tape if that's your preference. I'm going to work in sections, and I'm going to start here in the middle, and I'm just going to put a little bit of glue just right there on that stabilizer. And once I get a little bit of glue there, I will start folding those pieces that I cut up. I'm going to add a clip in place so that it can dry and not fall down. I'm just using my thumb to push each one up, making sure that I have it folded as far up as I can. The edge of the Royal Pixie Heavy will be serving as the guide. Your fabric should be folded all the way up. Even though it's not cut up to that edge, it should be able to be folded up to the edge. When we flip over, we can see that smooth curve already starting, and we don't see any of the cuts. It doesn't look like it's cut, it looks like it's one smooth piece. I'll go ahead and take my glue and do another section, and I'm going to continue all along here until I get this done. You don't need to use a lot of glue because it's really just going to stay in place until you sew it. Here's how the accent of that Poppie pouch looks. Again, this is the size medium, and I'm using woven. If you're using the vinyl, you wouldn't have to do this step. I'm going to let this dry, and while I do that, we're going to work on the zipper. The pattern tells you how long to cut your zipper tape out for whatever size Poppie pouch you're making. I went ahead and added the pull onto the bottom of my zipper, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a scrap piece of vinyl, and I'm just going to make a raw edge version of a zipper tab. You can follow the pattern directions if you want to use their method so you don't have a raw edge here. I'm going to slip this on, and then I'm just going to top stitch. I'm going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from that raw edge of the vinyl just to connect it to the zipper tape. Once you have that sewn on, clean up your edges if you have any overhang and trim up your threads. After you have your zipper tab on, the pattern tells us to measure from the zipper tab to the end of the zipper tape. And what we are going to do is make 2 marks here. And this is going to be where we fold this back to make that 90-degree angle. So I'll separate the zipper tape. I'll put my finger right where that mark is that I made, and then I'll just make the crease there. She uses a stick pin to secure these in place until she gets to the sewing machine, but I'm just going to add a clip here and then go ahead and sew it. After you have it clipped into place, go ahead and take it over to your sewing machine. I always sew it so that we're going towards the fold. I feel like that's the best way to do it. Otherwise, if my foot goes over the zipper teeth, it does kind of shift it and I feel like it gets out of alignment. I'm going to still sew in the same way even though I'm on the other side. I'm not shifting it around. It's a little awkward, but it's okay. And it does give me the best results here. Go ahead and trim up the extra zipper tape and any threads you have. I'm going to use my lighter just to singe up the edges here and go ahead and melt some of those loose threads. They're still hanging. My zipper tape is complete. What I'm going to do while I'm waiting on this piece is I'm going to find the center marks on my zipper tape and on all my panels, and I'm going to go ahead and attach this piece to my lining. Here's my lining piece. I'm using a piece of water resistant canvas, and since I'm using vinyl on the other piece, the only type of interfacing I had to do was the little bit of Royal Pixie Heavy that I added on my accent. I'm going to go ahead and attach this zipper to this lining piece. I'm going to take the center mark here and match it up with the center mark here. When you're attaching the lining and the zipper together, you will have both pieces right sides up. So I'm looking at the right side of my lining and the right side of my zipper tape. I matched up those edges and now I'm just slowly curving and clipping this zipper tape down. I'm only going to worry about clipping one side. I'm not going to worry about fooling with the other side. You can see here that my zipper tab's sticking up a little bit. I'm not going to try to shift it down too much. So I have this part of my zipper connected to the lining. I want to make for sure I have a decent sized gap on both sides. I don't want my zipper to be caught in the seam allowance whenever we're sewing this together. On this piece, I have the zipper closing to the wrong side because this one will be attached to my front. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the zipper by just basting this into place. Whenever I add the exterior, that's when I'll use the full seam allowance. Here's how the lining looks when it's just basted with the zipper tape. I'm going to set this aside. If you have any overhang, trim it up. Now we're going to start working on this accent piece so that we can attach it to the back. This piece will be attached to the front, but I'll wait until we have both panels finished before we move on. Here is the piece of vinyl that I'm going to use to make my piping. I cut this vinyl 1.5 inches wide and I made sure the length was plenty long enough to fit. All I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this wrong sides together and do a basting stitch. I'm not so much worried that there's not a piece of cording in here because I don't really need a thick layer of piping. I feel like it'll stand out plenty and just give a hint of contrast and look really cute. So I'm just sewing down those 2 raw edges. They're folded wrong sides together, just a basting stitch here. Here's how the piping looks. You can see that my glue has dried, or at least dried enough so that I can remove my clips and go ahead and go on to the next step by attaching this to that back piece. I have the center marked on this main panel piece and I have the center on my exterior. So I'm going to match up those 2 center marks. Both of these pieces are going to be right sides up, so we're looking at the right sides of both. I'm going to match up that center mark and it should fit perfectly along the top. If you are not adding any piping or any kind of decorative stitch underneath, all you would do would be to baste the top and then top stitch around the bottom. But I think this is a great place to play around with different materials. If I had it on hand, I thought fringe would look so cute going around here, or even that trim that has little gems or jewels dangling down. So many ways to make this just a really cute fancy pouch, I felt like. Or if you're making the clutch or the purse version, lots of different options. So now that I have that clipped into place, I'm going to go ahead and take this edge of the piping and I'm just going to line it up. It's going to be completely even with the top. Move this clip over just so I can slide it in. Decide about how much piping you want to show. I don't want a lot, so I'm not going to have a lot showing here. This vinyl is stretchy, but even if it wasn't, we'd be able to kind of manage it, because what we're going to do is we're going to slowly curve it around. And you think, okay, it's going to look horrible because it's stiff and it's not going to curve right. But if we hold it flat on each step and just slowly take a stitch and curve, take a stitch and curve, it's going to turn out okay. So the first thing I do is I just have it lined up there at the top, and I'm going to start by back stitching just 1 or 2 stitches there. And you can see it's coming out here. I don't have it clipped at all. I'm just going to slowly go around here just 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge of my accent piece, and while I'm doing that, I'm pushing this vinyl underneath, making sure the same amount is showing all the way throughout. Don't try to rush this step or you would get like puckers and bunching, but if you go slow, you won't have any problems with this. Making sure everything's laying flat, you're taking a stitch and you're adjusting. And I can feel a pucker here, but that's okay. I'm using my fingers to flatten it down so that it does lay flat and everything looks smooth. Adding piping is not tricky as long as you're willing to go slow, and it really adds such a unique look to any bag. It just takes it up to that next level. Once you get to that other side, let's go ahead and trim off this extra, and then we will baste across the top. Here is my back piece. Let's go ahead and pull out that front piece one more time. And look how easy that was, and it just adds such a cute look to it. Now we're going to pull out that lining piece that we attached the zipper to. This is going to end up being the front because I have the zipper closing this way, so that way whenever we attach the front, it'll end up being closing on the left. I'm going to take this front piece. This is what I want to be my front. I have the center mark made. I'm just going to attach this by matching up those center marks. So the center mark on the lining, the zipper, the main, clipping all around here. So now we have our exterior and our lining right sides together. The zipper is right sides together with my exterior. We're going to sew all along this top edge. Personally for me, when I have a curve like this, I want to make for sure that I minimize the risk of having a wavy zipper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over to the lining because my lining is thinner than the vinyl, the exterior on the other side. And then I'm going to sew this, but I'm going to get my edge of my foot as close as I can to the zipper T. That will help me minimize any chance of waviness with that zipper. So I start at one side and I'm going to go all the way across to the other side, going slow, trying to get that foot against the edge of the zipper T. When you get to your zipper pull, you will need to move it. Now that we have these two pieces connected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside and I'm going to open this zipper. So I'll open the side with the 90-degree angle and open it all the way to the tab, and that just makes it easier for me to push out. So the designer tells us that we are not going to top stitch through the lining and the exterior. We're just going to top stitch underneath the zipper tape on this exterior side. The lining's not going to be in the way. The first thing I need to do is I need to make sure that I'm pushing out this zipper tape. So I'm going underneath and pushing everything out to make sure I have it nice and smooth. So now I'm going to take it to my sewing table. I'm going to have that seam allowance going down, and I'm going to sew from zipper tape here, this folded edge, all the way to the tab, but just through the exterior part and the seam, not the lining. So the whole time I'm sewing this, I'm using my hand and keeping everything laying flat. I'm making sure I'm sewing the exterior and that seam allowance by going underneath and making sure the seam allowance is going down. And I'm pivoting as I go, just going really slow and keeping everything even and in line. I'm sewing about 1/8 of an inch away from that folded edge. I'm not worried about this exterior laying flat. I'm letting it curl up if it needs to, just so I can get a really nice top stitch here. Once I get to the edge of the tab, I'll just do a back stitch to lock in those stitches. Go ahead and push everything flat. Close your zipper tape just to make for sure everything looks good and you're content with how this looks. So here is the lining, no top stitching here. Here is the exterior with the top stitching. Now what we need to do is we need to do those same steps for this other side. I'm going to go ahead and start by matching up the center mark on the zipper tape with the center mark on the lining. Once again, I'm only going to clip down one side because I can adjust the other side as we go. I'm just going to baste across here to attach this zipper tape to the lining piece. Now that we have the lining attached, go ahead and grab your back, match up those center marks once again, and now this time I'll do like I did with the other side and sew as close as I can to the zipper teeth, but I'll be sewing from the lining side just because it's the thinner material. Now that I have both sides of the zipper tape sewn, I'm going to once again pop this out and do another top stitch. I once again have the front and the back attached. So now what it's time to do is it's time to open this up and then flip it so that our exteriors are right sides together. You'll want to have your zipper pull maybe in the middle. You don't want it all the way up, just so you can make for sure it doesn't get caught or get hit by the needle when we're doing this final row of stitching. So I'm going to start clipping the exteriors together. I'm going to clip the linings together, but I'm going to let my zipper tape kind of fold down to the lining side. I'll still be able to clip it together, but the zipper tape will be kind of bowing towards the lining. I'm going to go off camera and clip everything together, and then we'll come back and talk about how we're going to sew it. So I have the lining clipped right sides together and the exteriors clipped right sides together. You can see that I have the seams matching up here on the sides, and like I said, the zipper tape is going towards the lining. Here's the seams on this side, come around, we can see the seams on this side. What we're going to do is we're going to sew all these straight areas. We're going to sew both sides, and you can sew them all at once. You don't have to stop, so sew all at once. You will use a bigger seam allowance on the lining and then grade down to a smaller on your exterior. Sew across your exterior bottom, and then on the lining bottom you will do the traditional step where you leave the opening here in the lining. So you'll start sewing here, back stitch, go to the middle, back stitch, break your stitches, skip and leave that opening, then back stitch again, and then sew to the other side and back stitch. Make sure you check the seam allowances on this step because they do change and there is a little bit of difference on the seam allowances. So let's go ahead and sew all these sides, and then we'll come back and box the corners. Here I am sewing the exterior side with the regular seam allowance. I'll keep sewing until I actually get onto the lining pieces. I have the seam pointed towards the exterior, so you can see the seam is going up, but like I said, the zipper is going down to the lining. Once I get over this area and actually fully on the lining, that's whenever I can start veering over to that bigger seam allowance so I can take the full seam allowance here. Once you get all of those seams sewn, you're going to box the corners. So what I like to do is I like to start with that lining first. I just reach my hand in, and I definitely want to open up from the middle. I don't just work here in the corner. I open it up so that it spreads on its own, and then I'm just going to nest these seams. So I'm spreading so that everything goes flat. I'm going to nest the seams, pull everything so I can get a straight line, and then I'm going to sew across here. Again, check your seam allowance and also make for sure those seams stay stacked on top of each other so that you get a really nice finish here. When you box your corner, check to make sure it is going straight across, and then trim up the seam allowance by about half. You're going to repeat that same step on the other corner. So you'll have 2 box corners on the lining, 2 on the top. On the top, just make for sure again that you pull from the middle, and so it's a really nice opening. So as you can see, I'm sticking my hand in there, I'm spreading it open. Once I get it kind of spread open, and that will allow me to get a really good opening there. Nest those seams once again. It doesn't matter which way you nest these seams, as long as you let this seam allowance be laying flat. You don't want one side going one way and the other side going the other way. You want it to be able to be laying flat. Add the clip on there. Let's go ahead and sew this exterior, and then the rest of them I'll do off camera. I have all the corners sewn together so everything's boxed. Now it's time to turn this bag right sides out. This is the main reason why I hate using vinyl, and I did have my opening a little too small, so it'll take me a while, but I'm going to go ahead and slowly push this Poppie pouch out. I have my Poppie pouch turned right sides out, but I still need to close up that opening in the lining. So I'm going to reach in and pull it out, and we're just going to sew across that opening. I have the raw edges tucked in, and I am going to just sew about 1/8 of an inch across the opening just to have everything closed up. So I'm making sure it's nice and flat, everything looks good. Back stitch. And then sew all the way across, back stitching when I start. Here's how the inside of the Poppie pouch looks. You can tell it has plenty of room in here. This is the medium. I'm going to close this up and I'm going to change the angle so that we can look at all three sizes of the Poppie pouch. Here is all three of my Poppie pouches. We have the small, medium, and large. They all turned out adorable. They're all different and unique. This just shows that this pattern is extremely versatile and fun. Even though these are all different and they each have a different feel, I think it's a great set altogether. So this is the perfect pattern to have fun with, to explore with, and to definitely use your custom prints with, because you can still use them, get to enjoy them, but you're not wasting the entire yard of your custom fabrics. This pattern is from Sewflo Sewing Patterns. I'm going to have the link for it in the description. My accent pieces, all the fabrics are from Brittany from the Emporium. They are all available for pre-order now. The vinyl on this one and on this one is from Jen's Fabric. Thank you so much for watching another tutorial of mine. Thank you for joining us on another marathon day. I hope you're able to watch all the other sewists, and I hope today's videos maybe inspire you to try the Poppie pouch, clutch, or purse, and I hope it just prompts you to get in your sewing room, to create, and just to enjoy your day. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day.